Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello, and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Mike, and I am here today with Evan Paul. How you doing, man?
Doing great, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. We got a lot to talk about today, and I'm happy that you're here. I guess you get to be Legion Dad today because Kyle's not here.
Yeah, I'll take it. It just so happened that right before we started recording is that a couple news items came out. So unlike the Stabcast, where they usually release a podcast right after news comes out, is that we get to be on the forefront as usual. So much better to be on that end, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So do you want to just kind of give people the TLDR of, I mean, you've been on here a few times already, so most people I imagine know who you are already, but kind of give people the short version of who the Evan Paul is.
Yeah, sure. So Evan Paul, go by Doc Velo, and I am the deputy blog editor. And so for the junk that I put out, and then also the decidedly not junk that Matt Bronson puts out for Shatterpoint, along with some other articles that we sometimes get from players such as Austin Miller or Andy Terrell, is that I serve as the editor for that side of the blog. It's usually the Friday side for me, or the Monday side for the rest of them. And also right now, I'm in the middle of trying to get our blog as updated as humanly possible for the fact that the game basically changed. I shouldn't say basically, it literally changed overnight in late July. And in doing so, I think my rough count is that it invalidated 90% of the content that we had on the site. Like, luckily, anything that had to do with hobbying is still a-okay.
Sure.
But anything that we wrote about the game is pretty much had to get thrown out the window.
So I've been unit guides all over again.
Yep, I've been working on those. And after that, we're going to have plenty of strategy stuff that we're going to have to update too. There's we wrote plenty of stuff on the website about how to win at objectives like recover the supplies and bombing run and hostage, and all of that just like immediately got incinerated. So it's been a good time on the blog side.
What are you talking about? There's objectives like hostage and recovery supplies, right? There must be in this new game of Legion we have.
Maybe someday. Not now.
Someday. Yo, please give us extracts. Please, thank you.
Yeah, please. Maybe if you want to change primaries and secondaries to secures and extracts overnight and just like do it 1984 style, where you just change the PDFs and don't talk about it and then pretend that it was that way the whole time. That like, I don't think Mike or I are going to actually complain about it.
No. Okay, go right ahead. I'm totally okay with that. We can just pretend it was like that from the start, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we do have some news items today. Some pretty big ones. I think we've got a Twitter update, and we've got kind of like looks like a little bit of an accident that maybe somebody posted on the AMG website a little early. I guess let's start with the Twitter one, because that I think is probably, I don't know which one's probably more relevant actually. But we have can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So we've got a dev team sit down on November 6th at 10 a.m. PST. So I guess that's 1 p.m. EST for all you East Coast folks. And if you're somewhere else, I'm not gonna do the time for you. But they're gonna talk about the upcoming points update with a discussion and analysis. Interesting timing on this announcement.
So the first thought, so I noticed a couple of things about this. The first of all is that they only use the word points, and so sort of the other aspect of the way the game is right now, which is card updates, it doesn't seem like they're going to be showing anything about that, but depending on how much they're willing to answer the predictably unruly chat when this goes on, is that we'll see about whether they comment on when the other cards are going to come out. We'll talk about that in a second. But the other thing that I started to wonder when I saw this was, to what extent did they think that they were going to be here in late July? We're in early November. AMG has, like, self-admittedly for them, said that they usually like to sort of go into a mini hibernation when it gets to the holiday time, is that they're like doing work internally, but that they don't do a lot of community engagement during that time. We don't have product releases for the rest of the calendar year for any of the games. I think maybe there's a couple for MCP, certainly not for Legion. But and yet here we are, and not only are they going to be doing a points update, but that they actually wanted to come on and talk about it. I'm not going to complain. Like, it's awesome. I am always going to be someone who prefers for like more open communication rather than the opposite. But this is a little bit unusual for the way that they typically do things. I don't remember them doing a stream just to talk about points before, unless you do.
I don't really either. That's not to say that it didn't happen, but I feel like I would remember it. I do agree. This seems to me, the fact that it's points and no cards, the fact that it's I'm gonna put this in air quotes, so soon after the initial batch of kind of like updates. I honestly wasn't expecting to hear anything until next year. I know last week I was like, oh man, I really hope we get things by Christmas, but that was more of a joke, to be completely honest. So I'm happy that we're at least going to sit down and talk about it. I think I am cautiously optimistic, and I would love to hear what they have to say. I definitely think that there is going to be like a fine line between like the obvious Republic nerfs that need to come down, and whether or not they like put Republic 6 feet under in the process of doing so. I think that's my foremost concern, is that now that 50% of the players in the game are playing Republic, it would be pretty bad if all of those armies were just invalidated overnight. So I think there's some fine line walking to do here. But I think it's definitely an achievable objective that they can achieve with points updates, I think. So
yeah, I've been on the side of Republic, the current state of balance being very off. Like, you guys talked about the grand tournament numbers that we have so far in last week's episode, about how at the time it was 9 out of 13. The one GT that I know of that was this last weekend was actually won by Separatists. So that ratio is like a little bit less bad than it was before, but
sure.
It's still very deformed in terms of how many people are playing it, but also even more so when you think about how many people are winning with it. So yeah, I've been on the side of this can be fixed with a big air quotes, big as possible, with just point adjustments, and that they actually shouldn't try to change cards again. I've seen some folks sort of pontificating about the fact that the arcs, really, it's mostly arcs, and then a little bit with Gemso and Anakin, talking about the fact that those card changes were just too much. Specifically giving charge to the arcs is probably the biggest thing, and that it would be tough to recover from that. But at the end of the day, I'm not like a game designer, but the way it seems to me is that if a unit is X amount of good, then you will almost always be able to make that balance by making it cost X number of points or Y number of points that makes it line up with how good the unit is. And that historically, both with FFG and AMG, is that they haven't actually changed unit cards to make them worse ever, as far as I know, is that whenever they've changed unit cards, they've done it to make the unit better. And that has been in the more important service of making the unit more fun, right? Like you think about the original eWeb, I wasn't even playing back then, but the original eWeb had plotting on it.
It was so bad.
And it was terrible. And so then they took that away and then made it sub mediocre for 3 years or whatever. And now it's potentially like earning its place now that they gave it range 4. So they're getting there eventually. I don't know how many times they changed the T47, and they still aren't there with that one, unfortunately. But
T47's been up and down. I feel like it was playable for a while.
It was. You're right.
Now it's kind of back to where it was.
That's fair. I think it had a brief moment in the sun. But anyway, all this is to say, I'm encouraged by the fact that they are seeing a balance crisis, quote unquote, when it's there. I think that this is more severe than anything else that had happened under AMG. You and Kyle had talked about that last week, is that the current situation is worse than the worst moments of Blizzard Force. It's worse than the worst moments of the brief moment between Pikes coming out and the existence of Blizzard Force, when they were just sort of winning everything for like a month. And this is, it's worse than the post standby sharing Rexstar stuff, which was also pretty bad. And I remember
that stuff was pretty busted.
I mean,
like, I'm not gonna lie,
it was pretty fun for people like you and I that took advantage of it, but it wasn't fun for our opponents much of the time. But even that is that I don't think Republic was as dominant during that as they have been during this period of 2.6. And so, and like I've heard from multiple people who play other factions who have just talked about the fact that the current state of the balance is a damper on the fun they're having with the game. And that like those people have said that they've been planning on taking a break from organized play until balance changes come. And reading tea leaves, I think that, AMG is that they're not ignorant of the fact that this is happening, and the way people are talking, like they're on the Discord, they're listening to people. And I think that they're jumping in earlier than they ever have before because there's good reason to.
Yeah, I think them responding so soon is great. I'm hoping that this is like hey, we're gonna talk about the points update today, and that when we get it by like December 1st or something, I think that would be like an optimal scenario. If it's even sooner than that, great. That would be, if this is like, hey, we're talking about it today and it's dropping this afternoon sort of situation, like, whew,
their style is generally to just kind of drop it once they're ready to talk about it. Like the experimental droids and Wookiees, it was just like a same day drop, and the tournaments the week after just had to deal with the fact that those things existed now. With 2.6 is that they were technically a next day drop for the biggest change the game's ever seen. But, obviously like the tournament scene figured out to sort of just like figure out tournament by tournament about when they were actually going to change stuff. But yeah, I could see them just announcing this for 2 weeks out, something like that, make it pre-Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then because that way you don't want people who have like put together lists for this Saturday to have to mess with what they've done.
I don't know, man. Those filthy Republic players. I see all those comments you guys leave in the YouTube chat. Nah, man, those filthy Republic players deserve it, from what I understand.
I mean, some of us are very bad people for playing the list that we're playing, and I'm specifically talking about Austin Miller as one of the worst for unleashing what he unleashed upon the world. But I love you, Austin. But yeah, like at the end of the day, I feel like you want to do it quickly, but you shouldn't actively mess with somebody's like plans for a tournament if you can avoid it. But who knows? Maybe they're just going to say this was so bad that we just want to change it now.
Rip off the band-aid.
Rip off the band-aid.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be screaming from the hills about it if they did.
No. All cheers from over here for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I guess we'll see what that is. I'm sure we'll talk about it more next week, undoubtedly, as far as the contents of that seminar and maybe the points update itself. We do have another news item though, and you made me aware of this. I wasn't actually aware of it at all until you brought it up. Seems like this went up live on the AMG kind of like I guess product page for a brief
it
moment
looks like
in
it's a
time.
product page.
The Star Wars Mercenary card pack.
Yeah, and so they also interestingly listed it as SWQ04. So they did mention on the Mini Stravaganza streams that the L's changed into the Q's for whatever reason. I don't know why those numbers were chosen, but that sort of signifies the start of the next edition of the game. I know they don't want to call it that, but we can because it is a new edition.
Will Schick called it a new edition in his latest interview. So
okay, so he finally relented.
We've finally gotten there.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. That's another prediction from earlier in the year that I can like finally check off the list. So like this one is SWQ04, and right before the cast, I did some quick self ABCs talk to try to remember what the alphabet is, and I think that the way that it would shake out is that if you have Confederacy, Galactic Empire, Galactic Republic, Mercenary is the fourth one, and then Rebel Alliance is the fifth one, is that it would make me think that the 1 through 5 is going to be like per faction card packs, which I'd seen some chatter that this had been like confirmed before, that this is the way they were going to do it. I know that they had said they were going to have like products for sale that had the new cards for those of us who wanted to have real cardboard and not just print and play.
Yep.
But I myself had not seen that that they were going to be doing it per faction like this. It makes sense because there's a lot of things to update. This does make me wonder if SW06 is going to be like upgrade card pack. And
yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Because there's they unfortunately need to de-art every upgrade in the game, so they can put it into the new format. But the other thing that I'm wondering about this is that it could just like, this is just like a description of the product, but where they it's all like nebulous stuff. There's nothing specific we're going to get from this aside from the fact that they're updating all the mercenary cards. So we can assume that they're being literal about that, which would mean that it's not only going to have your Shadow Collectives and your Bounty Hunters, but that it would also have your Ewoks.
I was curious about that. Do you think they're going to put like Bright Tree in this pack?
I think they are, because they, at the end of the day, if they want to have like a nice looking unified product, is that all of the styles need to be the same for everything, even if they're not going to be changing the actual text on the or upgrades that are on there. Like we already saw that this actually with the Fluttercraft Attack Craft, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But when they had to update the Wookiee Defender PDF to change Phase 2 clones to clone infantry when 2.6 happened. And so when they did that, even though they didn't change anything on the unit card, is that they also updated the card like art and style for the Fluttercraft Attack Craft. And so I think that's just because they were like, if the PDF is going to be in the new style, then we want all the unit cards to be in the new style too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, but there's some PDFs that I think just like for the sake of expediency, they haven't updated at all, which like Remnant fans are extra upset about that because turn 1 of Legion 2.6 now sort of screws out. They screw with Remnant in a way that they hadn't been before, is that they can't get their independent tokens at all. But like that PDF, and I think like Separatist Invasion, those are all the same because nothing about them changed. And I think that they're just like changing these things when they have to. So all that is to say is that when they say mercenary card pack, I'm assuming they mean everything. The thing that am less sure of is, are they going to be including the command cards that go with that? Because those did change style also. But
if we got to buy like a mercenary card pack and then like a mercenary command card pack and then like an upgrade card pack, and then if you play more than one faction, you're gonna have to buy like all 3 of those things for each one. That would get, because like there's a lot of for the upgrades, like there's an immense amount of faction specific upgrades too, right? Like just all the heavy weapons and stuff are gonna have to probably be in these packs too. But I think the heavy weapon, the upgrade cards are now like unit card sized now, right? Technically,
I think I don't know, to be honest. I thought that they were like a little bit smaller. I don't remember the exact dimensions that they are. You may be right though, is that they're like the same size as unit cards, but they're just like vertically oriented. And
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, which would mean that the upgrade card pack like could be huge, because there's a lot of unit specific upgrades out there, as you said.
And sometimes you need like 4 to 6 copies of certain upgrades, right? Like,
right. I mean, gosh, boy, that's crazy to think about, right? It's like if you have an army where you were a crazy enough person that you went out and bought like 6 stormtrooper upgrade packs so that you could have 6 T21s.
Yep.
And you have the models, and of course in real life is that no one would bat an eye if you had even just one upgrade card and you said, okay, this applies to all the minis and I'm using the appropriate minis, and literally nobody would care. But from an official like tournament rule standpoint, is that you are supposed to have an upgrade card for everything. I don't know how they're going to handle it. I sort of doubt that they're going to have 6 copies of T21 in every upgrade card pack, because it's going to be like this big at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like you got to buy 400 cards. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work either. I definitely, I think overall, I would like them to just be like, yeah, you can still use the old cards, right? Like whatever, not a big deal. I think
or that you can print and play like because like what I do now, just because everything's crazy, is that I get on tabletop and I go to the print view and I just change the landscape, and like I'm fortunate enough to have a printer at home, and I know not everybody's in that situation where you can go to FedEx office or whatever and just print out the list for that day. Maybe it's not very green of me to do that, but
and that's what I do too. It's the easiest thing to do, and it's simple, and I don't know, kill the trees. It seems like we're gonna kill the trees with these card packs anyways. So what would be crazy? I don't think they're doing. Do you think that all these card packs are gonna be like 5 languages, like they're
oh no
their Shatterpoint stuff?
Oh no. Dude, you just blew my dang mind.
Because they've been talking about like that's like a thing that has been really important,
right? That's a universal strategy for them, and that it was actually like I mean, it means that they don't need to worry about like supplies, but I guess that they said that at the end of the day, it also cut down on cost for them.
I'm sure it did. I've been
Uh,
playing a lot of Satisfactory
mhm.
and like making sure if you only got one input as opposed to five inputs going different
Yeah.
places, that's a big
Oh,
deal.
yeah, that
Yeah.
that does make sense.
You know,
Who said that video games didn't teach you anything, right?
I've been learning a lot from that game. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So, boy, good luck to AMG to figuring that out, because I'm pretty sure they do 4 languages for everything in Shatterpoint, and Marvel Crisis. I can tell you that, because I recently have been sort of trying to get into Apocalypse and Marvel Crisis, and I thought that it was sweet when you got all the Horseman cards, and like some of the French ones are pretty sweet. It's like instead of war, it's guerre. uh, and so and yeah, like there were for all of them there was English, French, Spanish, and German, and I think it's the same way in Shatterpoint. And so if you think about all those upgrade cards and 4 copies of each one, good night, man.
Well, I
I don't
guess you'll
know.
at least have 4 copies of every upgrade card.
Maybe that'll be
They'll
it.
maybe in different languages. I don't
I
know.
mean, like, is a T-21 stormtrooper in German is probably pretty recognizable, right? So I guess that's the way you can get away with it.
Yeah, it's just T21, whatever stormtrooper is in German, I
And
guess.
yeah, maybe that's another reason why they got rid of the art, is because then, like, I'm sure it makes it cheaper from like a printing and color standpoint,
For sure.
and then they, like, since the upgrade cards sometimes they have a lot of text, like you think about like Hunter, a card like that has a lot of text on it, but with the heavy weapons it just says add 1 T21 stormtrooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in any case, is that it's cool to see that things are to the point where somebody could have made an oopsie and put a product on the website for a few minutes or whatever it was, and it's good to know that that, like, at least per faction, that people will just be able to get like a box, because really the unit cards are the big thing. The upgrades, I don't know, I feel like people will figure it out, but you want to have the nice big real cardboard unit cards in front of you.
Totally. Yeah, and I think the fact that we're at the point where they're like, okay, we're obviously preloading these on the website, and I forgot to hit draft on this one and send it straight
Yeah,
to publish on accident. Generally when you're uploading those stuff to draft, like they're probably getting ready to go live sometime soon. So maybe we'll see pre-orders by the end of the year. That would be good.
yeah, I mean, it's all going to make you wonder, though, is that when, like, we've been told that these will actually be coming out in August, but will they release the print and play beforehand? I think that probably, if I had to guess, is that they're going to see how well just doing points adjustments sort of like helps for the hunger for the game, which I do think is a little bit at risk right now, because of balance. But it's not just that, is that there are some units that feel like they're dead in the water, regardless of, if Republic gets nerfed, like, still nobody's going to be playing Moff Gideon. Relatively few people are going to be playing like Lando. Is that there's a lot of cards that really need that update, and that is also dampening some of the enthusiasm. It's not just like the idea that one faction is dominating, it's that the folks own these minis that don't feel like they really mesh with the new game, and that's sort of a bummer too. So we'll see about whether these things become available sooner rather than later, because at a certain point soon, if that point hasn't happened already, is that they need to have sent this stuff over to be in the printing queue to actually get made.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess we'll see what the timeline looks like that, but I suspect we're gonna get that stuff print and play far earlier than the
I think so too.
actual. Yeah. I'm betting Adepticon probably.
I think Adepticon is going to, like, they're going to be showing it, and I think that when they show it, people are going to be hungry to use it. And so I think that they're going to be like, okay, it's going to be 5 more months of the sort of like transition period, and then when August hits, is that it'll truly be in Legion 2 point whatever. By then they might have just like given up and say that it's 3.0.
Yeah, it's just
people
just
be
change
like,
the name. It's like Star Wars Legionnaires or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, oh man. Yeah, so definitely excited for that. It feels like all of a sudden things are kind of wheels are turning, which is good. I have more hope tonight than I had 6 hours ago when we were yelling in Discord about it.
Yeah, my hope is that, like, this last week was maybe the bottom point of mood about the game, and that if things can get balanced for now, just to kind of keep it stable, is that it'll go up from there.
Yeah,
fingers crossed.
I think that's a fair hope, and yeah, we'll see what happens Wednesday. Cool. So I think today what we're gonna do outside of these sweet hot news items is talk about, we're gonna rank some battle forces. And I think man, these ads really just need to go. I don't know what happened to my ad blocker. Sorry guys, I'm doing my best. So you've been playing a bunch of Wookiee Battle Force.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to start there. I'm gonna actually, just so that we get this out of the way, I'm gonna take this ARC Trooper that represents 501st. I'm gonna put it here, and we're not gonna talk about it.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it. And I guess whenever we do the next episode, is that maybe like the first part of the episode, when you talk about the changes, that it'd be interesting to talk about like all the tier rankings that you've done so far, to think about what's actually going to have changed, because I just talked about how Legion 2.6 invalidated like 90% of our site's blog content. Is that a points change to Republic may invalidate like 25% of the tier content that you guys have been working so hard to put out for the last month.
I'm okay with that. That just means we can make new tier ranking content.
Yeah, sure.
And
they've been popular, so why not?
Yeah, and I also think, just personally, I think finely targeted, frequent balance updates are the way that you should run any game that has organized play, whether that be an online thing or,
as long as you have the ability to actually do the fine targeting, is that there is a certain point at which it can be too often. But I think, for sure, I think that, like, for what it's worth, is that AMG have always said that they don't want to be put in a schedule, and that they're going to do stuff when they need to. And so them doing an update like barely over 3 months away from having like made these changes in the first place is a sign that they mean what they say when they say that. And so I'm definitely a fan. But yeah, like obviously for right now, you got to deal with the situation that we have, is that 501st is there along with where Commandos and Anakin and ARC Troopers landed in the other tier lists.
Yeah, that's it. They're S tier. That's it. We don't need to expound upon it. Everybody knows where we're at. But let's talk about Wookiees, because I think foundationally, you've had a lot of experience with them. I haven't played with them at all. I've played against them a few times. And I feel like we've had some different experiences. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about Yoda and the fur guys.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes Yoda, sometimes not. And we're gonna talk about a few battle forces on here that have won grand tournaments. We've already talked about one of them that won like most of the grand tournaments, some of those didn't even have to be 501st, but the very first grand tournament that was held in the 2.6 environment, which it got a little bit lost to time because poor went out for game uplink, is that it was actually like the only 2.6 GT to have been run on game uplink, which means that when it got converted over to Longshanks, is that some of the lists got sort of like befuddled in terms of the actual text of the lists, and so sadly, like the winners list now shows up as a bunch of letters and numbers instead of what it was, which was a Yoda Chewie triple flutter battle force, and then there were I think that there was something like 5 melee Wookiee units to go along with that as sort of the backup. And on top of that is that I believe at Nova there was a Wookiee list that was in the top 8. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but what I do know is that at Crucible it was the number 2 list. Is that
it was in the finals at Crucible?
Yeah, it lost. It lost to Austin, who was playing the scary list that is probably going to be the list most affected, if I had to guess, by the changes that are going to come on Wednesday. But so Richard Lavery was playing that, and then I've recently covered, this is what you guys have talked about last week, is that there was a Polish Warsaw GT, which was very big. It was 75 players, and the runner-up of that tournament, who also lost to an Anakin quad strike list, he ended up being listed as the number 4, but he did lose to that list in a pretty close game, and they did it total Swiss style, so it wasn't like elimination, and so it was basically like the final match at the top table was between the winning list and the one that ended up being number 4 for strength of schedule reasons, I guess. But
sure,
that was Dominic Howry-Look. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that as correctly as possible. I'm sorry if I'm off a little bit, but he was running the other brand, so to speak, compared to the list that won the GT of Wookiee list, which is basically just the Wookiees on the ground, with Chewbacca as the leader, which may also talk about real quick about the difference between him and the Chieftain. But it was 4 of the shooting Wooks, the Kashyyyk defenders, and then 5 of the melee Wookiees, all of which had battle shields, and then Chewie. So pretty straightforward as far as lists go, but obviously it had play, and I think that basically what we're seeing here is that not every play environment is going to have the enough people that are insane enough to have bought enough Wookiees. It's sort of like the Ewok thing. It's not quite as bad from a cost standpoint as what Ewoks are. But you have to be like a little bit insane to have bought enough Wookiees to run a Wookiee battle force.
Well, there was this one day like 2 years ago where they might have gone on sale on Amazon.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I've got 6 boxes.
Sweet.
At least. I think plus my old ones. So
I'm
ready
prepared
to hot swap. And
you can actually make, I think, 7, or you can make 6 actual models out of every box. And so if you're like strategic, is that you can like make 6 boxes, like provide 7 units for you basically, or something along those lines. Sure. But anyway, it's been successful at the highest level, is that we have 1 win and then 2 runner-ups, where the only list that they lost to was one of the most broken lists that we've seen in this game in a long time, which is the Anakin quad strike.
Ever, period.
Yeah, like it I don't know. It's like it's tough to say compared to the environment. I think it is. You're right. Maybe it doesn't feel as bad as Rexstar did, but anyway, we're not going to be talking about 501st. We already said that. So it's doing well, and the cool part about it to me is that there are a couple varieties that you can try out when you're doing Wookiee defenders. Is that I think that if you were to really zoom out, is that it's basically either Yoda or no Yoda. And that like I've been a fan of the Yoda approach because I own a lot of Wookiees, but I actually don't own quite enough to run the no Yoda Wookiee list.
Sure.
So I think I have 6 units total, and that one that I mentioned has 9 units of Wookiees along with Chewbacca, which is awesome, but also nuts. So the Yoda list, obviously, you spend a lot on him, but I also like it with the Fluttercraft Attackcraft, which I managed to like keep myself from getting on like the Legion Discord and sort of like shouting that I'm disavowing the Notorious Scoundrels podcast, my very own coworkers, for the fact that you rated the Fluttercraft lower than the lowly Bark Speeder.
Yeah, I stand by that, but I'm willing to hear your opinion.
So the reason why I like it so much is because the best way to keep your speeder alive is to actually not get shot with the speeder, because no matter what speeder you are, getting shot in this environment where light cover is garbage is like never a good thing.
Yep.
And especially, the dice pools are still pretty strong, and you think about lists like that one we're not going to talk about or name anymore, is that can put quite a bit of hate onto speeder units, especially with 2 damage pierce 1 shots over and over and over again. And then whether you're Bark or speeder bikes, is that you're going to be dead after 3 shots of that.
Yep.
But even though like the running away stuff isn't going to help against strike teams, is that the biggest advantage for the Fluttercraft gunner is the fact that is that you can do this thing to where you move, and then using your reposition, you get arc at the end of that first move, and then you usually want that to be your compulsory move, and then after that, you make your attack as your first action, and then your second action is to get the hell away from the thing that is going to be threatening return fire on you. That is a thing that like regular speeder bikes can do sometimes, but that it's pretty tough to actually like get out of range. Is that if you started right in front of them, is that you can shoot and then move, run away. But even then, you're usually hoping that you can get behind some kind of a line of sight blocker, which isn't always going to be there. And so like when I was playing Blizzard Force in the battle days, is that the thing about speeder bikes with Blizzard Force is that you had to really pick the moment of when you were going to close in, because as soon as you closed in, like even back then when cover meant something, is that they would die. And that my goal would always be to never put myself in a place where the speeder bikes are going to take more than 1 shot in return. And that if they were going to take more than 1 shot, I would not be diving at that moment, as I would try to hold them on the side and wait for a better moment to dive. With Fluttercraft, you don't have to make that estimation, and especially in a game to where you can't be spending the game waiting around for your right moment to like do damage with the speeders that you paid 80 whatever points for, because there's only 5 rounds anyway. Is that there is a way to play Fluttercraft to where you deploy with a compulsory move, and then I'm going to try and use my hands to sort of show, but you deploy with a compulsory move, and then you bend the middle part of the template so that you end up at an angle. So you're going for about 45 degrees. And so when you do that, is that your firing arc, which normally that is at a 45-degree angle, but then if you move the model to 45 degrees, the firing arc will be going straight up. And the fun part about Fluttercraft is that if you did not reposition with the first part of your move, then that means that you're allowed to reposition with the second part of your move. And so if your target unit is in the side arc at the end of the move and you still have your reposition left, then that means that you know that with that reposition, you can get them in the rear arc, and then they're going to be an eligible target. So if you deploy that way, then you can get shots because the fluttercraft is so big, and because with the Wookiee Defender version, it's moving at speed 3, which makes it tied with the speeder for the fastest unit in the game.
Yeah, it's so fast.
Is that you get a lot of distance, and basically your compulsory move at that point is like a super duper scout move. And so even for a range 3 gun, is that as long as the opponent's mini is 8 inches away from like the edge of the board, is that you will have range to shoot it. It's either 8 inches or 9 inches, maybe something in between, but it's basically like range 1 1/3 from the actual edge, which you're often going to have targets. Especially the reason why I like them with Yoda is that Yoda can start with his 3-pip and put an order on everybody, and then not only that, is that he can be sharing aims with the fluttercraft when they're actually going in for their attack. Is that you can set things up to where you figure out what is your opponent's like forward enough deployed unit that is going to be close enough to shoot with a fluttercraft, and then you can literally like deploy from the exact same spot 3 times in a row, because after that shot you're getting out of the way with your second action, usually to put distance between you and your opponent's army, so that them trying to shoot at the fluttercraft would mean that they're going to get themselves out of position. And so what you end up with is sort of a miniature version of the kind of alpha strike that you get from commandos. It's obviously like 2 red, 2 black is worse than 4 red, and it's not high velocity, but it's not that much worse, and it does naturally surge to hit.
It's also got Pierce on it without spending
exactly
token.
And so when you combine that with the shared tokens from Yoda, is that you can get like a pretty effective alpha strike out of it. And so to give an example, is that I'm sorry, Izzy, for talking about this game that didn't go well for you on a podcast, but so I play with Izzy Gambliel, aka Isboticus. He's the actual like super good player in the Seattle area. And I was played against him in a tournament a couple of weeks ago, and he admitted that he like had forward deployed them a little bit too much, but he was playing Shadow Collective, and he had a Black Sun unit that it wasn't super far out. It was like range 1.5. But I found the shot. I did that 45-degree angle, and with the turn, then shoot, get away, second flutter, shoot, get away, third flutter, shoot, get away, and that unit was gone. It was completely destroyed with the 3 fluttercraft shots. And then, he only had 2 BSE units, and so one of them like never even got close to engaging. I've done similar things against heavy response units in Blizzard Force, where one of those 2 was just gone at the end of the first round. And then after you get done with that alpha stuff, is that you spend the rest of the game sort of doing miniature versions of that. Is that you figure out what your target's going to be, and then you're always trying to line it up with your first move and reposition, which is usually your compulsory, and then you shoot with the first action and you try to get away with the second action. So that keeps them safe. And because they're so fast, and if you really need to, you can just move 3 times, is that you can use them to dive onto objectives that are really far away, which allows you to, if your opponent has given you a weak side, but you're not there yet, is that if you have 3 speed 3 fluttercrafts who can get there, is that then you can basically like have them score on an otherwise empty half of the board.
Sure.
So they're really versatile that way. Now, like, I don't like the bomber. It can also do some damage. Like, I definitely ran into somebody here who murdered my Anakin with 3 flutter bombers because he can't do anything about it.
Yep.
But he got like his 2 little into the phrase surges, but otherwise he was just screwed because he doesn't have deflect. So that was a big RIP. And then, I think time's going to tell after these nerfs about whether it's going to be really worth considering in non Battle Force armies, because being speed 2 compared to speed 3 is like a very significant downgrade, because it means you're less good at getting away, and you're less good at threatening points that are far away. But I still wouldn't count it out, because again, like what all this boils down to is that the thing that sucks about speeders most of all is that they just die. Yes. And even though, like, so Fluttercraft had two advantages there. The minor advantage is the fact that when they do get shot, they at least get heavy cover as a starting point, which is a little bit better than light cover. And because it's a one mini speeder, this is just like the Bark in this respect, is that if they take 3 wounds, luckily they can't get the weapons disabled thing, which really used to suck for them.
Yeah, it was horrible.
And so now, they get damaged the same as everybody else at 3 wounds, which isn't amazing, but you never lose your firepower until you're actually dead. And so, when I compare that to something like a stab, like, good gracious, like,
like, what are we doing here?
But even like, the reason why I still think that they're favorable to a Bark is the fact that even though a Bark can put like more dice into somebody, and that the Bark is faster than the speed 2 version of the Fluttercraft, because it's like the medium sized base and speed 3 naturally.
Yeah.
If you don't have the weapon on there. And so it's like maybe a little bit faster at getting to objectives, but it doesn't have reposition. And that means that it's going to get it shot off, and then it's going to be vulnerable to dying the same way that every other speeder is. So that's basically like, that's my big selling points on the Fluttercraft.
What I'm hearing, I think, is that you are less high on Wookiees and way more high on Fluttercraft. It's not really about Wookiees. It's just about
for me, sure, but like
pilots shooting Pierce guns out the back end of
absolutely
cardboard boxes.
That's my personal pathology.
Okay.
But putting the Fluttercraft stuff aside, is that the other aspect of the Yoda version, aside from the fact that you can keep this Fluttercraft in reserve for the end of turn 1, is the fact that the Yoda version actually gives you command cards that are worth a damn, which is sadly something that the non-Yoda version, like, that's not something that they can say. I am hoping that when we get card updates, is that they will make the Wookiee command cards something to write home about.
I'm hoping they do that for not just the
for a lot of
command
generic
cards,
ones,
but
right?
for like a lot of the command cards in the game that are no longer relevant because of the update.
Even the Rebel and Empire ones that did get updated, is that like they need to be updated again.
Yeah, they're not even close to playable.
Nope. But and like all of that to me is like even more testament to the fact that even just your basic Wookiees are a good list, is that it's had so much success despite the fact that it doesn't have like anything that's worth mentioning for command cards. Like the only one that is decent, which is the 1 pip, is that you actually need to spend 5 points on Seize the Initiative to actually like get the real money out of it, to where you can affect both your commander and whatever special forces unit you want to give the other token to. The other two are not even worth mentioning, honestly. But what Yoda does is that he gives you really good command cards that you can use for the entire game. Not just his, but also the Yoda and Chewie one when you need him to move a little bit faster. And so typically with my list, I'll start with Yoda 3. And then what's really nice on turn 2 is that I mostly use the melee Wookiees, because they have a better range 2 profile by a little bit than the range Wookiees. Like obviously they have range 3, and the melee ones don't have range 3 at all, except for the bowcaster. But what's really nice is that if you have a Yoda with battle meditation, which means that with his 2 pip, since I don't think force push is really all that great on Yoda, honestly. So at least not in a Wookiee battle force. There's more of an argument for it in like a regular Republic list.
Yeah.
In the Wookiee battle force, he's actually more of a support unit, and he can do damage also. But I really like using battle meditation and giving an order each to. Right now, it's an ARC Trooper and a melee Wookiee with the bowcaster, because as of right now, an ARC Trooper is definitely still worth putting as a one-off because you're allowed to have one in your Wookiees Defenders list because it's so dang efficient. But ARC Troopers with Relentless were pretty good before. And even though they don't have like their sniper rifle with them in this iteration, is that 10 dice with 2 aims and a surge token with Relentless is like really, really good.
It's something.
Nuts. But also just like that range 2 Wookiee shot with Relentless is really strong because that allows you to have something to do with your Wookiees on the way in to a certain extent, because normally you're trying to like hide in terrain until it's melee fun time. But this way you can have like an actual approach and do quite a bit of damage. Like, if you're targeting a speeder, it's just going to die. If you're targeting a trooper unit, like you're going to probably get 4 wounds or something out of it. And that's a really strong way to start the engagement and build up momentum. And then for the rest of the game, you're just sort of, you're flying around with your flutters. By then you'll be into melee range with your Wookiees. Yoda will be there and he can start hacking. And that's been pretty successful for me. And then that's also the strategy that the Salt Lake Grand Tournament player used. And then the other side is a lot more simple, is that you just have a Wookiee commander and a whole bunch of Wookiee units, and you basically just charge. Both those lists that I mentioned is that they put, they're very efficient about it, is they put battle shields on the melee Wookiees, and they give bowcasters to the ranged Wookiees. So like when you put that to the extreme, is that you can have 9 units of Wookiees if you've bought that many. Because something that I actually forgot until I saw that Poland list is that you're allowed to have 4 special forces in the Wookiee Defenders list, which for list construction means that you're talking about 4, like usually often 1 arc and 3 of the shooty Wooks, or you can mix and match between the shooting and melee Wookiees, but you can have some decent range guys to sort of be in your back lines, but then your front lines is, again, it's not complicated, but whether it's 5 of them or 6 of them, is that it's 12 health each, and that list especially is like 120-ish wounds total, with the worst saves of all time, yes, but it's still 120 wounds, so you need the dice to like actually cause those wounds. And if every time you get rid of a mini, they're doing that little speed 1 move, which is the other part of the Wookiee Defenders bonus, is that either A, you can hide your shooting Wookiees behind a line of sight so that they can't get punished too much if they had to poke out early, or B, for the melee Wookiees, they're just getting closer. And if in fact the only list that has been able to like super consistently deal with them from a tournament standpoint has been, one of the most busted lists of all time, which is probably about to get nerfed, is that defenders may be in a pretty dang good place once these points changes happen. So I would not write them off. And so for this list, I would actually vote that they be A tier because of their GT performance. And then it's like a little bit of a preview of how we think they're going to be after Wednesday. I don't know how you feel about that after my campaign speech right there.
No, I mean, I think that's very reasonable. They've definitely performed very highly the last few months in tournaments. I think the gap between S and A here is like at least that, like there's probably like a tier in there that's empty, sort of.
It's big right now for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
But so I think that the fact that they're like right on top of each other kind of makes it look closer than it is. But yes, I think once the list that shall not be named gets nerfed, I do think that I think Wookiees are probably, out of all of the battle forces we're going to talk about today, maybe maybe the best one, other than might be the best one that we're gonna actually talk
I think
about.
there's one that's right there with it, and that I think you can like, which happens to be the one that won that recent GT in New York.
Let's talk
uh,
about it.
yeah, so that is experimental droids.
Okay.
They, I think that if you take out the 5 or whatever GAR units that got major bonuses from the 2.6 update, is that I think that like right behind them is the is our favorite mollusk, vaguely mollusk shaped tank, the snail tank, or the persuader. I love that in CIS is that like pretty much everything is about like economics in one way or another. Like when you look at the names of like the ship classes, is that it's like munificent class, and then even when you're talking about something that you would think has nothing to do with economics, like a tank that's vaguely shaped by like a snail, is that, oh, it's the persuader tank.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair.
But like I think that's the thing that got the biggest bonus from the 2.6 update, and it was all because of one slot, right? It was because it got a second ordnance slot.
Well, uh, I think there is a couple of reasons. I think that is the first one. I think the
Yeah,
second is that
exemplar.
getting
Yeah,
2 copies of Exemplar in
yeah,
the EXT shell
certainly
is
helps.
huge. Yeah,
Certainly
yeah. All of
helps.
a sudden you're like, yes, I have free dodge tokens on my nimble AI dodge tanks.
Or
It
3 aim tokens on my precise 2 tanks if you really want to make sure that
yeah, yeah.
those
You
11
you
dice
definitely
get through.
you got some options for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting how much they've flexed like out of like the BX sniper. Obviously they took away the capacity to take 3 BX
Mhm.
um uh squads, but I think the snails are probably better at the new points allotment anyways, um for what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I think they're probably so here's the question though. Do you think EXD is better or worse than the current iterations of Wookiee lists that we have out there right now?
So I have not personally played that matchup. I've gone against a couple of sys lists that were non Battleforce ish. It would, I think that EXD would be favored against the Fluttercraft list because they also will have total order control, but they're going to have more activations, which means that they can keep the snails to just like blast the Fluttercraft out of the sky, most likely.
Instantly
Uh,
vaporized.
yeah, pretty much. You know, the range 4 attack, which hopefully like you would be forcing them to do the range 4 instead of getting the full range 3, is that's 8 dice, and so like math says that a Fluttercraft should be living on like 2 health after one of those shots, but um
Sometimes it'll be
it's
at 0.
it's sometimes going to be 0, and so it's not going to be great either way. So I think that would be tough. But I think that against the like the full Wookiee list, is that I think it would have trouble, just because um they would have to really hope that they can get ranged attacks off with the B2s before they get engaged with the Wookiees, because um what the B2s, do they do 1 red in melee now, or I forget
No,
exactly what it is.
I'm pretty sure their range profile is their melee profile.
Oh, it is their melee profile. Okay, well then that does help them for sure. In that case, the Wookiees would probably be trying to engage the B1s as much as possible to like stay safe, and hide a little bit. But um, I think that it would still be like a lot of health for it to chew through, and so uh, I'll say this is that even though we've seen a few good Wookiee performances in these grand tournaments, is that EXD has been more consistent in terms of like showing up in top 8s and top tables. And I we didn't really talk about this, but it's like an interesting question of like, is it possible that they're going to nerf anything aside from Republic when this update comes out?
I think
Um,
the answer to that is it? Yes, it's possible. I think it's I think
Anything's
it's
possible, right?
yeah, I think it's unlikely.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I
I,
mean,
so I think to like kind of keep us honest is that as much as I love the Wookiees, is that I think EXD has been, it's been more of a presence. Certainly, it's like, you don't have to be quite as much of a crazy person to run an EXD list. Like they built in that variety of
whoa
like
now.
they built in that variety, right? Of like you can have a couple commandos, a couple B2s. We gave you this Magna card, but you don't actually need any of those.
Yeah. It's like the Battleforces designed for the Magna Guard, and
Right.
you just don't take them. They're just bad.
Yeah. Uh, so it's been more of a presence, and I feel like overall their performance has been a little bit stronger. So I think that maybe it's just that I don't like the idea of like both Republic battle forces being at the top. But
Sure,
I
sure.
think EXD putting a little bit ahead of Wookiees for now. We'll see what Wednesday brings.
That's fair. That's fair. I think that's very fair. They definitely have, I think, been I think the more consistent comment is um definitely true. And I also think that they've been a little bit more on the radar from the start. Like
Mm-hmm.
we just like moving into this edition. Like obviously EXT was already kind of top dog. So um I think that makes sense. So let's talk about the other separatist battle force.
Oh no, this poor
Wh-
thing.
Well, so it's interesting because I feel like the invasion force was sort of like touted as like one of the pillars of this new edition, and they're like, you can bring like 100 and bajillion
Oh right.
B1 battle droids because you can take 8 squads and double all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that there's a couple things here. I think that actually might be good, but I have yet to actually meet a crazy person who has bought 16 boxes worth of B1 battle droids.
Yeah, same here. I certainly have. I have a couple like friends who only casually know about Legion, and that just from like a promoting chaos standpoint, they were like, "Hell yeah, I want to meet the guy who's going to run that list." Uh, but I mean, I think it would be fun to make it happen. You would probably need to have like a couple pals who also are like committed droid players and put all three of your collections together, and then you
That's
can
the
make it
thing, right? Like
happen.
you can't even like take two battle droid collections from the previous edition, put them together and have enough. Like
It's not
that's
enough.
not
It's
enough.
not enough. You're right. Is like it could be good. I feel like the people who have been sort of microdosing, so to speak, the super battle droid squads haven't had good experiences with them because they sure do die
They
pretty quickly still.
They do. And I definitely think like the B1 squads definitely I think would have a similar issue, but there's just so many.
There's so
There's
many.
just like you literally could like make it so that your opponent like couldn't be on POIs at all because you just have so many guys, you
That
know?
is a good point. I didn't think about that. Uh, yeah, that would actually be my nightmare. I
Rightly
was
insane.
like, I'm not going to name names, and I don't think less of them for having engaged in this. But when there was, I don't know if you remember, there was like a period of time where people were talking about using force lift to like put barricades into places where they would like between them and the terrain, they would literally block you from tagging evaporator.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff that I really just hate because like balance can be fixed by changing points cost, but if a game is ever such that you like physically can't play it, then that's like one of the worst kinds of NPE in my opinion. And so like a part of me is sort of like cringing at the idea that you would be like physically locking somebody out with the number of battle droids that are on the field. But at the same time, is theoretically you would just need to engage one of them and then you pull, I don't even know how many minis over to you.
So here's
And
the thing: you might be able to surround whatever you
oh, but they just need to be in cohesion after that. You're right.
and cohesion is range
Is range
one.
one. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
like, I mean,
I moved to delete the last 5 minutes of the podcast, please.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just it's a lot. I think at the end of the day, I just don't think we've seen people actually try this yet. Is the big thing.
Yeah, we had the guy who did the, was it 21 act rebel? It
Yeah,
was something crazy like that.
yeah. Which has a whole host of other problems, but
Well, but and to, I apologize, I don't remember his name, but to his credit is that the thing I was afraid of when I heard about that was that the amount of time he was taking to play the game was going to be the reason why he kept winning these games. But like from everybody I've heard is that wasn't the case. So credit to him for knowing that he needed to play fast to that list. But with the droids, it's not even about how many activations you have. It's but yeah, just like using the minis to block somebody out. Yeah, that seems very dark. And I'm glad that we haven't heard of it yet.
yeah, yeah. I think it's coming. Once people, I don't know. I think I'm willing to put this like tentatively in like B tier. I don't think this is like a bad battle force because you can just like, you know, put a billion guys on the table. I don't
It
know.
does have a couple of big problems. Maybe one of the biggest is that it can't run super tax.
Yes, which is weird. This whole battle force has always seemed like
I may have
crazy.
written an article about it back in the
Did
day,
you?
but
Did you?
I've
It's like
never.
so off theme for like what it's supposed to be. Like I don't understand at all. It's like this is the Separatist invasion force. You can take Darth Maul, but you can't take a super tactical droid. Like, excuse me?
Yeah, like yeah, it's always been the battle force in search of an actual theme.
Yeah.
Because it was like 3/4 of the way there to being an episode one battle force, but then they were like, we don't have enough units for that, so we're gonna toss Count Dooku and Magna Guards in there.
I think Grievous is in there too,
And then
right?
Grievous is,
Yeah.
yeah, Grievous, yeah, exactly. But I mean, the box art was really good, so I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean,
For
maybe we're
Battle
just
Force.
waiting for like, the when we get Gungans and they release the rest of this battle
Yeah,
force and
for
they fix
sure.
it.
The other downside to it is that it can't take, can it take one Magna Guard? Is that it, or can it take more than that? Sorry, I'm gonna make us like actually pull
Yeah,
up
I
right now. Not
actually
to.
I'm gonna have you pull this up so that I don't
Yeah.
dox myself here.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking it up. Battle Forces, uh, and so they can take up to two special forces, and so they can take two Magnas, but they can't take commandos, which like they're pretty good too. And then for support, that one feels kind of rough because they can take staffs, which is like boo. They can take decas, which is better. They can't take spiders, which is maybe the best support slot that they have right now.
For now.
And yeah, until the crap comes out and then gives scouting party to friggin' Count Dooku.
I'm looking forward to it.
that would be kind of neat.
Yeah.
But yeah, like and then as far as the core go, is that you can't take what is maybe the best core, which is the B2. And so like you're really banking everything on the giant B1 units like doing the work for you.
Yeah.
Also, the command cards, you get one that gives a standby to a tank, and that's cool. And then the other two, I think, are very bad.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, okay, let's move it down to C.
I think C for now. We may mush around with it, but
yeah, we'll see where that ends up. Yeah. I just like that amount of droids sounds like a scary thing to have to deal with.
you may be totally right. But luckily, that hasn't been proven, and I hope that it never will be.
Me too. Me too. I don't. Well, I'm not going to give away my secret project for Worlds. All right, so that wraps up our separatist stuff. Let's take a look at Rebels real. Actually, let's. So are we not talking about Shadow Collective today? It's not really Battle Force, right? It's
And
just.
well, so they gave it its own faction slat. If it's SWQ04,
You're
is
right.
that I think that finally we won't have to listen to the finger wagging erudite punks out there who keep reminding us that that Shadow Collective is a battle force, not a faction.
I mean, it is technically a battle.
Yeah, I know, but I think I think that we give it a sir not appearing in this picture or not applicable for right now because given the fact that they've received 0 updates and that they are doing bad right now, let's be real, they're doing bad.
Well, I mean, it's tough. It's tough not to be bad when half your units rely on dodge token generation and clone
Right.
commandos are what they are.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, Commando's going away and they make Pikes a little bit better. They still, I think, got made worse with the cover changes also. But I think just because of the fact that we now have seen that there's going to be a mercenary card pack is that it almost feels unfair to like dunk on them. And so right now, okay, maybe I'll say this. The Mandalorian stuff may be okay.
I think it is okay for the most. I mean, it's so okay as you can be right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable, and I think the points increase actually kind of like allows you to play like quad mando
Yeah.
maul shells in a way where you don't feel terrible
Yeah.
about your choices. Um
So I'm like, it's tough because I don't think we've really seen it tested too much in GTs. Like relatively few people have been playing Shadow Collective, and those who have mostly been going with the world's winning list esque approach to it,
yeah.
which is, it makes sense to concentrate on buses and swoops and BSEs. It's just that like it doesn't quite work in this new environment, certainly as much as it was working when it won all of Worlds. But there's a part of me that wants to just like put it in C just to rep the fact that I think Mandalorians are a thing that just hasn't been tested enough.
Okay.
And so who knows, maybe it'll still end up being at the bottom, but I think that when we get these new cards, I don't think they're going to be changing Mandos all that much. I think that they're going to be, I think they are going to change the other, like the 2 core units. And then, the various bounty hunters are certainly going to hopefully have some command card changes to make some of them more relevant. But I think the Mandos are mostly okay. And if they had better stuff aside them, they'd be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Put them in C tier.
Shadow Collective is in fact a battle force. they're on the tier ranking.
Yeah, and until AMG officially tells us otherwise, that we will go along with the erudite finger wagging punks.
All right, so Echo Base. I'm like pretty down on Echo Base. I think
you play Rebels, so you go ahead and
cook. I
sometimes
dabble in Rebels. I would say that they're my second most played faction right now.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't touch Echo Base with a 10-foot pole personally. FD cannons kind of suck in the new edition.
Oh yeah,
they're like really not good.
And they're rough with the POS system.
I feel like if you're playing Echo Base, you're kind of like in it for the support slots, similar to Blizzard.
So that's my question is, have you encountered Tauntauns in 2.6? Because I have not.
I have.
Was it with 501st or another Anakin?
Look, man, I know I'm the bad guy. Okay, I'm the evil dude, doing the thing. But I think Tauntauns, they've got a similar issue that speeders do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is that they have gone up in cost significantly.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have great damage output for their cost. They're super fragile. And Taunts have like an additional problem in that like they don't get the compulsory move. So they're not even that fast in
Right.
comparison to the speeders. Um,
And unlike with dewbacks, there's no access to compel to get them over the courage 2 problem, which is very often a problem, is that if you can only move once and then do your little 4 dice, I mean, 4 dice sharpshooter 1 is better than it was pre-cover changes, I'll give you that, but it's still not what you want out of a 100, like almost 100-point unit.
yeah, it's just so expensive. I would be much more on the Tauntaun train if they were, 15 points cheaper or something.
Yeah. And maybe their points adjustments will help.
Maybe
with
they
that.
will be, right?
They do need help. And like dewbacks, funny enough, dewbacks I feel like have never truly had their time in the sun until now, is that they've had like 4 fake times in the sun that never actually worked out.
Almost got there, but
exactly.
not quite, and dewbacks are doing great.
Tons had their moments and now they're in the back, but I think that they can have it again if they were cheaper.
I just like compare the Tauntaun to like the laser ATRT. The laser ATRT is like 60 points. It's range 4.
Yep.
Like, is the damage output worse? Yes. Is the unit way safer and way more durable? Also, yes. It's not really that much slower if you're like double moving. I don't know. I just think like also like you really don't want to get like super close to your opponent with your rebel units early in the game. And
Nope.
you kind of have to do that with Tauntauns, I think the other thing is that the Tauntauns are a unit that you really need to end up getting in melee to feel good about what you're getting out of them. And so many units have dice pools now that just you're in a place in this edition where you can absorb melee charges way better with the average unit across all factions, whether that be B2s or fleet troopers or whatever. How do you feel about Echo Base?
Yeah, I also feel that it's rough because of that support slot, like you mentioned, is that is the thing. And I also think the T-47 is in a really bad place right now. And that's their other option to sort of pad the points out. And then there's no special forces available at all. Which is tough because like one of their newer, better units, Sleeper Cell, and also their older good units like Pathfinders and sometimes Commandos are also not available to them. Bad Batch isn't that, you think of like the units that enable rebels to compete right now, is that the only overlap is Hanley and Luke. And that's pretty much it, because most of the successful rebel lists, like everything else that's in there, is completely different from what is available to you in the Echo Base Defenders Battle Force.
Yep. Yeah. It's just I think Echo Base goes in the bottom of the heap here.
I think we put him at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, there's a reason they lost the base. I don't know. Sorry.
Wow, this is a revisionist history of what happened at the Battle of Hoth. It's like the units were just bad. Like, what do you want me to say?
What did you expect?
You were charging ATSTs with Tauntauns. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of charging ATSTs with things that maybe you shouldn't be, Bright Tree Village.
So this was one where I felt like we have to give a big shout out to France, because actually France, and then like I would insult somebody by making some kind of a joke here, but it's France and Quebec actually, is that there are grand tournaments in each one of those. So big shout out to the French speaking people from 2 different nations for having, it was in Quebec, I think it was a GT, and then in France I think it was their national tournament, which wasn't a GT, but it was like a big tournament with a lot of like very accomplished players there. Is that both of those have been won by Ewok lists. And until that happened, I had been wondering about like how good are Ewoks really in 2.6? Because I think the tough part is that there were probably some mega tryhards who were playing Ewoks like at previous worlds because they thought that it was the best list.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, like that kind of a player would have switched to 5 first like almost immediately when those PDFs came out.
Sure.
And so they would have left Ewoks behind, which leaves you with like then you're left with the people who are like either dedicated to the theme or who like still saw something in it. And I think that at these 2 tournaments that I mentioned, is that like they were pretty similar lists, is that they were similar to the list that got farthest in Worlds of the Ewoks list, where it was mostly just focusing on the Ewok spam with 3PO with low gray.
No ST or anything like that.
Yeah, it originally had no ST, and that basically both of these players is that the adjustments that they made, and the lists were different on the edges, but that they basically just put Chewie in there, and they also found some space to double up on at least a couple of these skirmisher units. Sorry, not the skirmish, the slinger units.
Sure. Yep.
Is to put the extra squad upgrade in, which is that unit is one of the best arguments for doing like the full squad upgrade in the game right now because of the economics of it.
Those skirmishers so good.
It's really good. One of the articles that's been bouncing around my head is like what decision to make about that upgrade for each of the different units in the game, because like if you compare the slingers where it's like a really good slam dunk decision to double up on it, and you compare that to veterans where they charge you like way more than they should to add more minis that probably aren't helping you that much, and you probably just should have been put in a Mark II instead of that anyway.
Yep.
Is that it's usually not worth it, but in this list it is. And so I had always been thinking in my head that the nature of the game, to where every objective, the number of activations you have matters, and that Ewoks were going to be weathering the cover changes better than like B1s can because of low profile.
Yep.
And what you're left with was that, like, in theory, Ewoks should still be pretty good. And I think that it's just that in America, we just haven't had enough people who have, had both the collection and gumption, so to speak, to like try to make it happen. And so, like overall, their performance has been like a little bit less than XD and Wookiee Warriors, but I actually feel like Ewoks may be at the bottom of A tier. I don't know what you think about it.
I mean, I have an issue in our like just the Nova area generally. There's not a lot of people. There's not anybody really playing it.
I think it's a problem all over America. I think we're just wimps, and that we're following. You could say either you're a wimp or you're a pragmatist, and it's just like the eye of the beholder, right?
Sure.
But over here on this side is that, as far as those battle forces go, is that 501st and XD and even Wookiees seems like it's been more popular than Ewoks. Probably like the collection thing is a huge part of it. It's cost
I think
hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, and I think specifically Ewoks, in contrast to all of these other battle forces, are like the hardest. They're the most specific collection, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
this is the only place you can ever use your Ewoks,
right.
really. But I mean, look, I've been, every Rebel list I've built has had at least
a slinger in it, right?
At least 4 Ewok units.
Oh wow, okay.
I've been playing 2 Ewok core plus Underworld connections for a second skirmisher in all of them.
What a world.
In all of them.
Yeah.
So like I'm not, the fact that I'm doing that in my like regular Rebel list says to me that, I mean, I can see it. I can see it being A tier for sure. I'm just not gonna put down. I'm fork over the dinero for
No,
this at the
I
moment.
have no plans. Maybe randomly on Facebook Marketplace, I'm going to find some old Ewok player in the Seattle area who's finally had enough, and is going to sell a collection at like 1/10 of the cost. Is that I would probably get it then, but my God, is it expensive to get into?
Yeah. All right, so A tier for the Ewoks. We've got the Empire stuff left, which let's start with Tempest. Um I Tempest is a little weird. They can Scouts got a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Having big, like Tempest can do a big alpha strike, which is an important thing to be able to do in this edition. As like we've talked about, like the top 3 lists there all have effective alpha strikes, which I think is why like those are the top 3 battle forces we have listed.
Sure.
And Tempest can do that too. So on the ST side, between that and Scout, and the command cards are decent. Most of them are anyway. Is that, and I believe they have won one grand tournament so far. My problem with it is like everything else that goes in the list. Is that speeder bikes are very bad.
How the mighty have fallen, man.
Scout troopers feel like it's tough to think about Scout troopers in a world where we have like not only arcs but also like from an economy standpoint, is that it feels like sleeper cell and BSE. I know there's a core, not special forces or whatever, but like it feels like Scout troopers are one of the less economic, just in terms of damage output.
Really?
Just because they don't have any surge access, and you do have to pay a fair bit extra to get the sniper in there, and they don't get tactical.
I think you're taking these guys with no upgrades whatsoever. I think you got to look at them as like what are they, like 48 points or something
48
with no heavy weapon. I think you're looking at this as I'm taking a 48-point unit that throws 8 black dice at range 2, has scout, and can hide behind the ATSTs and then move through them and shoot when you're ready.
Yeah, I mean it's not terrible. And then you don't have to. Do you have to run any stormtroopers in Tempest Force? I
don't think so. I think you can
verify it. I mean, it's not like stormtroopers are like terrible or anything, but I mean that list is the ATSTs, and
particularly in the new edition, there's just not enough points in it for it to be about anything else at this stage. Like the 6 scout sniper thing is kind of
yeah. You do have to run one stormtrooper.
One stormtrooper.
Yeah.
But
that's it.
It's fine.
So
you just take
fine.
a DLT or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably fine. I don't think it's on the level of these other 4 battle forces up top.
I think that we put it in the B tier. I think that feels right, and that obviously like you can succeed with it. It has GT win, and there are certain lists that are going to have very little to do in response to 3 ATSTs shooting all their guns at you on turn 1.
Yeah.
But there's other lists that are going to relatively quickly melt like 2 of those ATSTs, and then what is the list at that point?
Yeah, just kiss your ATSTs goodbye once those commandos get to range 2. That's all I got to say.
And I'm thinking about that going up against EXD, and it just feels really tough.
Yeah, the snails will still vaporize those guys.
Yeah.
All right. Imperial Remnant.
Ooh.
Man, this is a battle force that is now I mean, I think before, when it was less points, you could get away with this not being a battle force focused on the dark troopers.
Now you have zero choice.
Now you have zero choice. Yeah. It has to be a battle force devoted to dark troopers. Man.
And they're not in the best spot right now. Armor 3, oh my God. When I saw that, I was like, boy, they're already expensive. I feel like this is just like piling on for the Dark Trooper super fans here. Yeah, ouch.
Yeah, they were already nerfed pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I also think like Armor 3 aside, I think they're pretty slow in this edition of the game as far as like two speed one move. Like you're kind of like you're Palpatine slow.
Yeah, like
Which is a real thing.
I wonder if I wonder if giving, like, that's the thing, is like giving them scout, it doesn't feel thematic, but it almost seems like it would have been necessary. I think that giving them infiltrator prepared positions would have probably been too much.
I mean, infiltrate would have been very thematic. Them all
It
like
would have
rocketing
been,
out
yeah,
of the
the rockets, but
sky,
then, oh
But yes,
man,
probably way too good.
it'd be so good. But yeah, it's like I was listening to the That's No Moon podcast, the UK one. Hey guys, if you're listening, but they were talking about how like shooting an AA5 and shooting a Dark Trooper unit with the same dice pool is like not all that different in terms of expected wounds they get out of it, assuming there's no Surge tokens floating around, because it has 2 more armor on there, and then the save is like a little bit worse, but that it's between that and how slow they are, they're in a rough place. And like you said, is that in this battle force, you have to be centering your battle force around them, and then the crappy tasting icing on the cake is that they can't get independent tokens on turn 1 because everybody is hugging each other before deployment, and that feels really rough because I feel like they also rely on those. And even more crappy tasting icing is the fact that their only support slot is the speeder bike, which we've already mentioned is hot garbage at the moment.
Yeah, I also feel like the
Oh, I'm sorry, they have e-webs, so I apologize.
they
They can take those. They can forget the bikes. E-webs are not terrible.
And notably, I don't know, do E-webs, I mean, E-webs probably get the independent thing too, right?
I think all units do. Like
So
every unit.
E-webs have prepared positions, so E-webs probably
Yeah,
would be able to trigger the token
yeah. That's a
generation.
good point. I didn't think about that.
Which is good. That Battle Force should be about E-webs. It's
Yeah,
like because that scene is dope. Um, but
it is.
yeah.
But the funniest part about that scene is the fact that like he was talking up such a game, but then he just ends up like blowing it up when the Mandalorian starts using it by shooting the generator. But it was funny at the time is that he was talking about how he was shooting troopers out of the sky, and everybody else was like, range 3.
Yeah.
How was it getting
Excuse
to
me.
the troopers in the sky? But yeah, I feel like the Dark Trooper stuff aside, is that you can still have some nifty combinations of heavies, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like I would put it at the bottom of C tier. I don't think that it's actually as bad off as Echo Base is, because there are some good units that I can toss in there. And if you have Gideon, is that at the very least you can at least use that command card to punt one of the Dark Trooper units into the most awkward place for your opponent, to like start causing a lot of trouble on turn 2.
Yeah,
so there's something to that.
that's fair. Yeah, I agree. Bottom of C. Sorry, Dark Trooper boys. Luke is showing up. Blizzard Force.
I guess, would you say that Blizzard Force has been like on a very slight downward hill ever since the Worlds, where it was half of the top 8, I think, if I remember right.
Yes, I think it took a pretty steep dive with this edition, though, considering its second best unit. I guess, yeah, second best unit. and the speeder bike got a whole heck of a lot worse, and it's more expensive.
Yeah. Blizzard has also won a GT. And at the end of the day is that the one, like, the thing about it is that it's true that speeder bikes are one of the center points of the list, but if the other two legs of the three-legged chair, so to speak, are Darth Vader and ATST, and then you're tossing in Veers, is like everything aside from the speeder bikes that goes in there is pretty good.
That's fair. I definitely feel like when I hear the words Blizzard won a GT, I hear Darth Vader won a GT. Is like what's going
You're
through my
right.
mind, right? Like I don't I like I just I do feel like if you like strip away everything that is presently going on, I do think that once Anakin Skywalker is toned down, Darth Vader will be the best unit in the game. Um,
I think that's very possible, which, would mean that Anakin Skywalker is still the best unit in the game. But
sure. If we're getting getting down to
yeah,
brass taxes,
now
but
I'm being pedantic.
it's okay. I appreciate it. But I do think that like is that because that they were playing Blizzard, or is that because of Darth Vader?
I'll say
I'm willing,
this
yeah.
is that even though the speeder bikes are going to instantly like melt into total smithereens, and I mean instantly after the alpha strike happens, is that as long as deploy them in such a way that they're not gonna like be overexposed on turn one, is that you can have a turn two just like wallop with all of your units. It's still a lot of offensive dice. And it's if you smack your opponent hard enough, then you don't need to worry quite so much about the return fire, because like you've won the game anyway. And so if they bother to try to kill a couple speeder bike units, it's not going to matter. And so that is the thing that the list still has and is always going to have, is that if you're good about, like, if you're patient with the bikes, and now being patient means like turn two instead of maybe waiting for turn three in the old days. But if your bikes are hitting at the same time as everything else in your list, is that it's quite a few fairly high quality dice. And some lists just aren't going to be able to recover from that. And so because of that, and because of the fact that the other aspects of the list are pretty good, is that I think that I think it's B tier. Whether or not it's better than Tempest, I think that it is better because Tempest doesn't have Vader in it.
I agree. I think Vader just like gets you out of some spots. I will say this may be our hot take of the day. I think people are playing the wrong version of this list right now. I think the speeder bike should be taken out, and I think they should put E-Webs in, and they should spend those points, however many points back you get from making that swap, to buff out the core or whatever.
I could totally see that, because it's not going to affect your offense all that much.
In fact, I think it probably increases,
maybe better,
frankly, because I think the E-Webs are more sturdy, they're more reliable, and they've got prepared positions. They're going to probably be hitting things turn one with the range 4 prepared position setup. And the best part about it is that if they want to like start, like, as long as your E-Webs aren't like completely forward in your deployment zone.
Yeah.
If they like step up and try and shoot them, all of a sudden they're kind of in like Vader's gonna infiltrate on your face range. And I think that could be, I don't know. I think I would like to see Blizzard Force go in that direction, as opposed to what I think we've seen the old guard of Blizzard Force be like, yeah, this is a speeder bike list. Like, that's what this list is. And I think maybe other than EXD, this list probably has had probably should see the biggest transformation from like what it was before.
I think you could very well be right. I think that what people shouldn't do is to consider removing Vader for a second ATST.
Oh no,
Like
God,
please
no.
don't do that.
I'm sorry. If you want to play, ATSTs, play the list.
Yeah, play Tempest,
Play the one
please.
that has like a
Uh,
vehicle
go
commander
go
in
over
it.
there.
Yeah. I mean, is that even is Veers even in the conversation here with like the guidance
I
stuff?
think that it's in the conversation about, do you want Veers or do you want to put like heavies on your snowtroopers?
For sure.
Like I think that is a conversation. I do think that like the generic Imperial officer is like no longer a part of the equation, at least as far as I can tell,
Yeah.
because she was in the list for reasons that aren't really relevant anymore. But I could see Veers, but I actually think that running the snowtroopers with ion guns is actually the best play. Uh, that may change if commandos start to go away a little bit, but
Well, we'll see. Once everybody starts running these
yeah,
13-man B1 units, I think you might change your tune on ion guns being the
yeah,
selection for your
fair.
snowtroopers.
But it's like now it's a critical one gun that doesn't that doesn't tap,
Yeah.
and so it's like a real consideration now. It's not bad.
No, it's pretty affordable, I think, too, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cheap, and it's black white. It's good enough.
Yeah. So I guess we'll put these guys in
At
B
top of
tier,
B.
top of B. All
Yeah.
right.
Look at that. We have a perfect
We
Vader's
do.
castle shape.
I think what you mean
Symmetrical.
is what's the name of the gauntlet? It's a
Oh
gauntlet
yeah,
fighter.
or a Fang fighter. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of those things.
Yeah.
But very symmetrical. Yeah.
Awesome.
So we did a good job.
We did. Well, that's the battle forces. There you go. S through D tier. Any additional thoughts before we wrap this up?
Join us next week when this list gets flipped on its head, because Tauntauns are going to be 40 points and Commandos are going to be 120. So
Yeah,
just get ready, folks.
Man, if Commandos are 120, man, I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
Whew, all right. All optimism. We're going
Yeah.
in. We're going in.
Let's hope they get
cautious
balanced
optimism.
to be as good as everybody else and not way worse than everybody else.
Yeah, and for those of you that want to see Gar nerfed into the ground, I'm sure you'll get your wish. So
yeah.
Cool.
Jerks.
Right. Well, I guess that's pretty much a wrap. So this has been the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Evan.
And we'll see you next time. Stay fresh, cheese bags. That is the quote, right?
That is the quote.
Okay. All right. I hear it every week. And
Sorry, Kyle, if we messed it up.